Hi there students, I'm just going to give you a brief tutorial here to give you a sense of my expectations for this analyzing a source writing assignment that you're going to be working on this week. And the purpose of an assignment like this is really just to give you a sense of how to start thinking critically about a source, how to analyze a source critically, how to give yourself a foundation to think about the source critically rather than just kind of reading it passively, but to try and begin to think and establish a framework for how to think about the underlying meanings in the source. And so I'm going to use this ancient Egyptian source, which is topical for this week when we're working on the ancient Middle East. And this is a source which is a hymn to the river Nile. So very topical for the Neolithic Revolution, development of agriculture in Egypt, other topics like this. And so we begin, first section of these sorts of assignments is very basic. We begin with the genre. The genre is given to us here. It's a hymn. It's a religious source. Move down, look at the place and the date of composition. We don't have a particular specific location here, but we do know that this is written in Egypt. It's clearly written by someone who has a sense of life in Egypt, and the date is given to us. So it's written 2100 BC, Egypt. And with these assignments, we want to be as specific as it's possible to be, but the source doesn't give us any greater specificity than that it's constructed in Egypt. The author and the audience. Here is where you start to have to think a little more creatively, because the name of the author isn't given to you. So here, for name, we're just going to write unknown. But you want to write unknown on as fewer lines as possible. So the name of the author is something that you may often have to write unknown for. But this next section should be possible to fill out almost all of the time for every source. Even if you're not totally sure, you want to be trying to deduce what the background of the author of the source is, what the background of the audience of the source is. So here, background of the author is, if we look through this, someone who is literate and either a religious leader or possibly a political leader. Because this is a hymn to the Nile, it's a hymn asking the Nile god to bring a fertile season to Egypt, and so therefore it's something. This source is being used in a religious context, but it has important political implications as well. Who might the contemporary audience be? Contemporary audience might well be those who are attending a religious ceremony, and again, religious, political leaders. So now we've completed the second part of this assignment. Now we move on to the third part. What are some of the main themes that we find in this text? And here you don't want just to give an overview of the text. You want to think about the text as a whole. And you want to be able to explain what are some of the common tropes, common pieces of information, common parts of life that are being emphasized in the source. And so one of the themes here is, or the three themes that I've identified at least. Fertility, the fertility of the crops, divine power, importance of religion, and the importance of the seasons. What are the locations mentioned? Here we have to scroll down a little. We know that, and here I'm not going to name them all because that would make this tutorial video far too long. But when you do yours, you should make sure you name every single geographic location that's mentioned here. It's part of beginning to analyze the text. Egypt, the Nile. So these are kind of bigger geographical formations, but also the orchards. It's a location that's being mentioned, is a part of getting a sense of this text as a text that deals with the geography and the agriculture and the rule and the religion of the land of Egypt. See if there's anything else we want to emphasize here, any other locations. No, that looks pretty good for the moment. Events and dates that are referenced. Not a whole lot in this text. There will be in other texts, but not a whole lot in this text because it's a religious text. So we're not seeing as many dates as we would see in a historical text or a political text or a legal text. But one event, and again, when you do yours, you should name all the events and dates that are referenced. But here I'm just going to give you one, just to give you an idea. The inundation that you see here. What does the inundation refer to? It refers to the yearly flooding of the Nile that was crucial to the agriculture of Egypt. So once again, by doing this exercise, you're building up a sense of the importance of agriculture, the way in which agriculture and religion are intertwined in ancient Egypt. So now we finish the third part. This is a part that requires some attention to detail because you have to go through the text in detail, making sure you pick out the events and dates and locations that are mentioned, and then you have to kind of think about it a little more broadly and think about what are the themes that are being emphasized. And lastly, we come to contemporary events that may have influenced the text. This is always a challenging one for students. Students typically struggle with this one because this means you have to think about what's going on in the text, then you have to think about what have I been reading about ancient Egypt around 2100 BC? What's happening at this time that may have influenced the text? And if we think about the PowerPoint, we think about the textbook at this time, what kind of things are they emphasizing? Construction. Make sure it's not bold. Construction of the kingdom of the old kingdom of ancient Egypt. And its survival. The old kingdom was at once flourishing, but also not that long now until the Hyksos are going to show up and attack and invade the old kingdom. So there is a real sense, thinking about these contemporary events that influence the source, give us a sense of the urgency behind the text, the importance of a good harvest, the importance of a good harvest to the stability of the kingdom, the livelihood of the people of the time. I hope this is helpful, and good luck on your assignment.